Good evening. I'm John Jordan. Welcome to St. James. It's our privilege to have you here, and especially this night, one that we've been looking forward to for a very, very long time. I chair the Speaker Series Committee here this year, and as you can read in your little header on the leaflet for this evening, we are here because we truly believe that the mind and the thinking and the words of wisdom of others are equally as important as the things that we hear in this place on a weekly basis. It's our privilege to share with you an inspiring program tonight by the Reverend Becca Stevens, and I'm sure you will leave fed and full when you depart this place. Again, it's our privilege to have you here, and welcome. I'd like to ask Philip Craig, St. James Rector, to get us started with a word of prayer.
Thank you, John. Good evening to all of you. I'm honored to be here to be a part of the welcome this evening. I do want to offer a special word of welcome as well to the Right Reverend Rob Skirving and his wife Sandy, who are down from Kinston this evening. We're grateful to have you here in our presence this evening. Thank you so much. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, for your providential care in bringing us safely to this gathering this evening, we give you thanks. We are aware of your holy presence. We are also filled with gratitude for this time tonight with Becca and with Kristen and Bella. May we all be inspired by this conversation, fully focused on how we might offer ourselves in leadership and in service toward the greatest commandment of your Son, Jesus, to love you and then to love our neighbor. So it is in the spirit of Christ's love we gather, and in his name we pray. Amen.
Yeah, I'm not using this. Does this one work? Yes, that's going to be much better than that sound, right? Unless y'all want to hear that sound all evening, I can do that. I have, raised 3 boys. I can talk through just about anything. So, you guys, I'm thrilled to be here, truly. I'm only here because Bishop Rob and Sandy invited me to the diocesan convention, and then I got to start to make friends. And so tonight is solidifying some of those friendships, and I know it will continue, that our story will be part of each other. You had me on this trip at the hospitality offered by John. Where are you, John? In the very back. You are the bomb. Thank you. You were amazing. And then we had a biscuit bar last night. And it was like, I'm here forever. Please, Philip, tell me you have an associate pastor's job available near where they do the biscuit bar. That was unbelievable. And because now I'm so excited to be here, I'm going to make this really short. My husband says, this has really happened like 3 weeks ago. I've never said this before in a talk ever. But I was trying to explain something to him, and he goes, just tell me what you want. Like, save us all time. So I'm just going to tell you what I want. Is that okay? So what I want is, one, is for you to know that there are women all over the world doing incredible work in recovery and healing communities. We don't see that in the news, and that is the truth. I want you to feel inspired that all of our very small efforts to be a part of that true story make a difference. That if we do these small things with great love, big differences can happen. That is such good news, isn't it? So y'all are a big amen crowd, I can see. Yes! Like, for a speaker, the more that you give back, the more that we can do. So let's try that again. Our small acts done in great love are making a big difference. Yes! And the third thing is this is the last 5 weeks before the end of the year. We will do something like 70% of our sales in these last weeks. So what you did at the reception, we're going to call the first round. Kristen, my amazing assistant and organizer of the event that you'll hear from a little bit later, brought so many candles. And so I'm just going to say what I want is for you to light this candle as your Advent candle. Don't buy an Advent candle. Buy this. It lasts 36 hours. If you hold vigil for 36 hours in Advent, you win. And if everybody just buys one more candle, we don't have to reship them and lose all the money for bringing them here. So if you will just pray on that during this talk, I would be super, super grateful. So that's what I wanted, and that's my talk. So thank you. Any questions? No, I thought first of all I would give you a tiny bit of context. I know many of you know Thistle Farms. They gave me a clicker. I just have to find it. There it is. This dress is for another person to be inside of it. But I wanted to give you a context. So this is a quick video. It's just an overview of Thistle Farms. I'm going to pretend like I'm doing it. Oh, it's off. You have the clicker on.
I was trapped in a 10-block radius for well over 20 years, and I sold myself as if I was a commodity, and I never dreamed that I would get my life back.
In my household, there was a lot of abuse that led me to using drugs, and then it led me also into the prison system. Being as young as I was, I felt like there was no way out.
My life was so, it was so much confusion.
Thistle Farms is a justice social enterprise dedicated to helping women who are survivors of trafficking, addiction, and prostitution recover and heal. None of the women that we serve at Thistle Farms ended up on the streets by themselves. It took a whole bunch of broken systems and broken communities that really rolled out a red carpet. That story is borne by the women of Thistle Farms, who on average are first raped between the ages of 7 and 11 and first hit the streets between 14 and 16 years old.
Women just don't choose to be on the streets or selling themselves. If you go back, you will find some traumatic circumstances that have happened in each woman's life that have made them feel like this is all I have, or this is the only way that I'm going to get someone to love me.
At Thistle Farms, we believe that women deserve a second chance at life. But the amazing thing to me is many of the women we serve, this is their first chance at life. You know, if they entered into trafficking at the age of 5 or 6, they never had a fair shake. And this may be the first time a community has invested in them to say, now's your time. We do this by providing safe housing, good jobs, and a lifelong sisterhood of support.
When I came here, my whole world changed. Everything. Everything that I needed was provided for me, from mental health meds to the physical help that I needed, dental, vision, free of charge for me.
Nobody cared about my background because I probably wouldn't have a job. It was just a blessing to be able to come somewhere and to get training.
See, I struggled so long with knowing if I was loved. That had a lot to do with me being in addiction for so long, because I didn't think anybody cared, anybody loved. But every day, the women in this community, they love me.
I have never been welcomed and not judged. And in my interview, my boss said, it doesn't matter about your past or what you're in prison for or what you did. None of that matters. Tell me what you do now for your recovery, for yourself, for your sobriety. And that was different. It was something I had never experienced.
People will love you so much. They love you back to life. I truly believe that love does heal. I like the fact that I go to work and I pay bills, and it's just different. It's just different being here on the other side.
Without Thistle Farms, I don't know exactly where I'd be. I don't know.
I had always been in a situation where I got to give something to get something, but this was one of those programs that we give and we give and we give, and all we want you to do is learn how to love yourself. And we're going to keep loving on you until you learn how to, and now I love me to death. I do. I love me to death now. I do.
I wish I had dreamed bigger sooner. I really do. I mean, I think I spent too much time thinking this was really small. And loving people is a really big idea, and it means that we have to be big enough to live into that idea. It's about remembering the amazing things that love has done and believing in the amazing things that are still to come. It reminds us to, stay rooted in that small circle where we believe one candle lit can bring another woman home. But it also means believing that we make a difference in this world and that together we can be a powerful symbol for how love heals. And that's what we're going to do. So we're just hitting our stride. We are the largest social enterprise of its kind in the U.S. But, we're just beginning to light a candle. And we're going to do it because people still love us and hope with us, and we are committed to growing the movement that reminds the whole world that love is the most powerful force for change there is.
When Philip and John and I were talking about this event, they said they've been doing this series on who is our neighbor at St. That y'all been studying that for weeks. And I said what I would like to talk about, because I think mostly we know who our neighbor is, but what does it mean to love our neighbor? What does it mean to truly love our neighbor? And how we love is a reflection that is good for all of us, no matter where we are in our lives. That our life is a love letter to God. But what we write in that letter might look really different at different times. I don't know about you, but during COVID, I personally cleaned out a lot of drawers and cleaned out closets that I hadn't seen forever, and I found a box of old letters. And in that box, I found a letter that I wrote to my husband. We've been married 35 years now, but this was 6 months into dating him. And in that letter, I write, "We've been through so much." I was 24 in divinity school. What had I been through? I don't know. I mean, I didn't even understand what teenage boys were at the time. That after raising them, I'm like, now I can really write. We have been through so much after 3 of them. But this idea that what we write now might not be the same thing we would write before. And what it looks like, and for us to reflect, what does love mean to you? What does it mean to you today in your life to love your neighbor? One of my favorites of all time is Dorothy Day, who started the Catholic worker movement. Started it during the Depression with making soup. She created an entire community and yet called her autobiography The Long Loneliness. And in the end, the way she expressed her love, she said, is just through prayer alone. I bet when she started out, that was never a dream of what love looked like for her. So we don't get to the point where we don't get to reimagine and revive, rebreathe what love means and what does it mean to really love our neighbor. When people come to Thistle Farms, when they first get there, love might look like a beautiful welcome basket, a key to a house, a comforter, time to breathe, and a small stipend. A year later, it might look like an advocate for the courts to expunge your record. It might look like a savings account to begin saving so that you can have a car, an apartment, and to make restitution with your credit, family history, all of it. 2 or 3 years down the road, what it might look like is a retirement account and good vacation benefits. It looks different at different times, and so how we love shouldn't look the same as a church, as a family, as a community. It should change with the needs and be flexible. It should be relevant and practical. One of the things I think right now is, for me, is like diving into our ideals again. That's what I want to say, is that you're being invited when we think about love to dive into your deepest ideals, not ones that have been tamped down by committees that decide what love looks like, not being tamped down by what we have now, which is such polarizing politics and uncertain economics and destabilizing wars. When you ask the question, what does love look like, for me, it makes me want to weep. You're giving me permission to remember my ideals, what I believe in the deepest part of my life. I don't think in many ways that I believe as much things now as when I was first ordained. I've let so much go. But what I'm left believing, I want to believe with my whole heart and live it for the rest of my life that I'm given. I was preaching in Toronto about a week and a half ago, and I've been on the road quite a bit because I think all the gigs that I had before COVID all came on the books this fall. And I was wandering around Toronto, I promise you, taking pictures of a black squirrel that I was fascinated with. Do y'all know they have beautiful squirrels in Toronto? And so much so that I was thinking, I could wear that. And then I realized I was chasing a squirrel. And for a moment I was like, I don't even know if I have faith. But my next breath was, but I trust that faith has me. That still, even in the lost moments, I'm searching and looking and being drawn to things that pull me in. And that's true for all of us. We have those moments where we find we're chasing a squirrel, chasing our tails, literally. And then it's like I'm lost, and then it's I am found. Love's got me. I don't have it. It has me. So how do I lean into it? How do I express and dive into those ideals? The other thing I think about this invitation to love our neighbor means it's not a committee serving a clientele. Loving our neighbor is an invitation not to be a hero, but to be a host. Meaning we're alongside people, right? If it's our neighbor, we're walking alongside, and loving someone alongside is very different than, here's the program for love. And you're going to join, and it's going to be 4 steps, but if you miss the second step, you're out. It's love. Loving our neighbor. And I think of it as one of the criteria for loving our neighbor is being in it for the long haul. They say one of the most loving things you can do is plant a tree that you'll never see grow into its full maturity. That you'll just have to imagine that you'll water it and care for it. And maybe our children's children will see that 100-year-old oak. And as a love story with our neighbors, we can imagine that all of us are leaves on that tree, doing our small part to do this deep work that takes a long time. If we're loving our neighbors, it takes a while. It takes a while. You know, it's not a one-night thing. It's not a grassroots movement. It's a tree roots movement. It means I'm here and I'm staying. And I'll stay here through the drought and through the flood and be with you. That's the kind of ideal, I think, and the visual that I want us to have on what does it mean to love our neighbors, is that we are connected to the vine, we are connected to the tree, and we are just part of it. We are doing Like I said, these small acts with great love, believing that something bigger than us is growing. And it's not on us. Every one of our neighbors gets to be the hero of their own story. The other thing about loving our neighbors is fellowship, right? I mean, everything in Scripture is about when community formed, they broke bread and fellowshipped and served each other. That's what they did. That we have to break bread. Our version of breaking bread is these tea parties that we have. We go around and we have these beautiful tea parties. What I love about the tea parties is many things. One of them is you can have an entire feast at a tea party. And you've only spent a little bit of money on some leaves and water. So there's a good return for us. And you got to be thinking about margins when we're loving our neighbors so we're scalable and sustainable. But it's about intention. Everybody's gathered for a reason. We want to cultivate a palate for justice. We want to see what it feels like to be in each other's presence and imagine something whole and beautiful. That we're fed, you know, much like all these beautiful rituals we have, like communion, you get a bit of bread and wine and you're fed fully. So loving our neighbor is one, about fellowship, two, about intention of that fellowship, and three, for me, is about remembering others who want to bring into the fellowship when we love our neighbors. At our tea parties, we give thanks for the cups. A lot of times we ask people to bring a cup that means something to them. A grandmother's cup, a friend's cup, something that's chipped that means something about our broken openness and transformation in that. And then we admire the leaves, and these are moringa leaves, and y'all all know moringa, right? Oh my gosh, I thought North Carolina was like really, you know. I'm from Tennessee, and we think North Carolina is much hipper. But, so moringa is like, it's had this comeback for several years now, and there's like an article in the New York Times that says, move over kale. It's the 10th new superfood. It is amazing, and people soak in it. Every facial oil you'll spend $60 on now has moringa oil in it to rub on your face. It reduces wrinkles. It helps memory. Or I might have forgotten. I don't know if that's right. But it does other things that are super important. And it has like a lot of different vitamins. It has all this stuff in it. So you soak it in water. And we serve it, and we serve it without any lemon, without any honey, without any milk. And the idea is to appreciate the tea itself. And the reason is that it's grown by women in Mexico who are all homeless, who came together to try to make a better life. They were trafficked, addicted, abused, part of the cartel, all of that. All the women came together. They started this company. People were buying it. We've been selling it. We'll sell it to you. We have like maybe 12 of them. And went down there for our first annual meeting for the new company, this international company the 5 women had started. And I just said, what do y'all want out of this? Because you know when you gather women, you're going to find out what the needs are. It's not hard. And all the data in the entire world, I'm talking about like Shared Hope International from the State Department, like big data, shows that if you invest in women, you heal communities. It changes the landscape of communities. And when you rape women, you kill communities. Did y'all read that article today? I can't even remember what paper it is in, about the massive amount of rape in Ukraine right now as a deliberate act of war. Because that's how you kill communities and infrastructures. So the women were talking about plans they had for their children, for their wider community, how they could love their neighbors, because we all want to love our neighbors, And then they were talking about their personal goals, and we got to the last person, Maria, and she said what she really wanted was to go out to lunch again. We were at a small roadside cafe, cheap roadside cafe. And it was the first time she had ever been invited to lunch in her entire life. And I was like, Maria, I promise we'll go to lunch again. We will sell enough tea to take you to lunch again, I promise. 5 women started, 5 women got houses. Moringa, geranium oil, all of it translates into education, housing, recovery, cars, taxes, all of it translates. The other thing about loving our neighbor means we have to lead with love. When we enter the relationship, and love looks like radical hospitality, meaning love without judgment. It means coming in and seeing people and being beside them to find out what their hopes and dreams are. It is defiant to love our neighbor. Everything in us says, you know, it's too big, it's overwhelming, it doesn't make a difference, it's a mean-spirited place. But to love our neighbor is a defiant act, not in spite of, but in response to, from the calling of the gospel. This was our first community that we started inside a refugee camp. I think I talked a little bit about it when I was with you guys, Rob, Bishop, and I'm thinking you're on Facebook, on Instagram. We know each other more on Instagram. But the first year we went, it was all Syrian refugees who came over to Greece. We started making love welcomes mats out of the life vests and out of the blankets they received when they landed. They didn't want their photo taken. They didn't want anything. It started with 9 weavers. We came back to Nashville. People magazine did a story, and then an artist named Banksy got involved, which completely changed the dynamic, I can tell you that, where there was now something like almost 50 weavers. We went from selling them for $85 to $500 a mat with a 6-month waiting list. We flew back over there, and before we went, the women said, can you please order matching t-shirts? Which is always a pretty good sign that the neighbors have fallen in love, right? And we get back there, and that's the photo they wanted. I'm here. Look at me, hear my story. I have something to say. I am valued. I love it. Most recently, I was in Poland about 6 weeks ago with a brand new group of women from Ukraine. They're all knitters, and so we've started Love Rises. It's a knitting community, making socks and daybreak influenced blankets. And I don't have any for sale tonight because I went to the Diocese of Texas when I got back, and I had 22 pairs of socks, and I sold 187. Which Kristen can tell you, there were some people not so happy with us at Thistle Farms, saying you can't really do that. And I was like, I think you can. Got back, and then, in October, the bombing started again in Kiev and Lviv. So the women who were from eastern Ukraine who had fled to Kiev and Lviv were now back in bunkers. And it's kind of a miracle because you can knit in a bunker. Women all had good jobs, had houses, they lost everything. They talked about the violence and the death and the destruction they know. The woman that's running it, her partner was just killed in September, like a week after we got left. The 3 things they want me to tell you, your neighbors in Ukraine want me to tell you about Love Rises is this. 1 is there is dignity in work. That when you've lost everything to have a job, and we had this beautiful funder, it's guaranteeing $300 a week per knitter. We just added 3 more knitters because of the sock mayhem in Texas. And it's important to have dignity in the midst of that when you're bunkering down, your kids are going to school in a bunker, and you're worried about shelling everywhere. They're still shipping blankets and socks. We just had notification of a new shipment last week. It's kind of a miracle. Dignity of work. Second thing is that the quality of work, so that people understand how beautiful the Ukrainian women are and how much pride they take. The quality of the work is super important. And the third thing they want me to tell you is that when they make the blankets and socks and they're shipping them here to share with other people, it gives them hope, and hope is what is helping them survive. It's the hope that's helping them survive. So we're being good neighbors when we hear the story, when we listen, when we enter into the really hard places with really small things, just to enter into the story. This is my first time ever to experience this invasion, this war on WhatsApp, getting texts from bunkers in real time. We are emailing and texting every day. If we love our neighbors, it changes how we want to offer our services, right? If it's about love. You know, one of the most radical things this entire country could do is to build shelters like cathedrals. To be the beacon on the hill is to be the shelter, the sanctuary, the holy place for people who are desperate and hungry for it. So for us at Thistle Farms, loving our neighbor meant basically like it means for you. How would I want it done for me? If I'm coming out of prison or off the streets, what do I want my bedroom to look like? Do I want to be in a big bunkhouse? Do I want to be institutionalized again? And for me, at the beginning, and you know, my roots were, my dad was an Episcopal priest who was killed by a drunk driver when I was a little kid. And then my first sexual abuse began at 6 in a church, where he had been the missionary priest. What do you call him? A priest who's doing a mission? Vicar? I don't know what you call him. I would want first safety. I think because I've longed for safety my entire life, it felt very important to me to be able to shut my door and feel like I'm safe in my bed. So that's what we started with. And then from there, it was thinking about, in love, what it could look like. And we had this beautiful visit with a safe place yesterday. It was so beautiful. And they have this dream of building a new residence. And I said, okay, just come to Nashville. We can have long conversations about what it might look like. Just come see and come talk, and y'all can have your own vision and love your neighbor how you need to do it. But let us be a part of that. And we have a national network of sister communities that all come together to try to do best practices. And one of the things I really want to learn from a safe place is their beautiful model of education and training for 11 to 14-year-olds. I think that could serve so many communities. And anyway, that's not what I was talking about. So this house opened June 2nd. And, you know, we paid about $1.5 million to build it. The community came together. It is stunning on the outside and the inside. If you could see it now in the finished product of it, and how we had an interior designer design the whole thing, and then smaller communities adopted each room in a loving way for their neighbor, but didn't do the designing, so it all held together. The curtains match the upholstery and the carpet, and you have vaulted ceilings where you can feel this trauma-informed architecture, that the colors are peaceful and beautiful, so that when people come in, guess what? They feel loved. It's not somebody's secondhand couch that has awful stains that you don't want to imagine on it. It is this beautiful thing that's like, am I worthy of this? How can I feel this, and how can I remember? It changes how we offer sanctuary and helps us be more welcoming. Being able to love our neighbor doesn't mean that you have to be inspired to love your neighbor. We're not always inspired to love our spouse, let alone our neighbor. But we do when we continue that relationship and continue on that journey, I haven't always been inspired to preach, but I've never shown up on a Sunday morning where somebody goes, "Oh my gosh, you look a little tired. Why don't you sit down? Just relax. We'll just skip the sermon. Don't worry about it. Nobody cares." If you're a parent, have you ever come home from a really hard day and had your kids say, "You probably don't feel like making dinner, let us do it"? No. No. Jesus says all the time, you have plenty of reasons to feel weary and not feel like it. You have heavy burdens. We've studied this all through Luke, all through the fall in our lectionary. You have heavy burdens. You have fear. You have all of these things that make you want to stop. And he tells parable after parable about the rich fool, about the idea of we're stuck in a place and Lazarus and dives, and he keeps saying, I get it, but guess what? We're focused. We are disciples. We are heading to Jerusalem. So what you can do is light your, he says lamp, I'll say candle. Right? That's a lamp, Ish. He says light, I think Jesus said, light your Thistle Farms candle. Be ready. And you keep going. There was a period of time in my life several years ago where I felt very uninspired. And I know our job as thistle farmers, as farmers in general, as all of us, is to water and weed, to go out there and do it again and again. You don't wait to be inspired to milk the cow. You don't wait to be inspired to water your plant. You do it because it needs it. And, I was feeling all that, went out to Nebraska in November, which is a bad idea, to help open a new house. And I preached at the cathedral there. I met with the foundations. I did the whole, we're so happy at Thistle Farms. Didn't dare tell the stories about, a woman that we had to identify by the sleeve of her tattoo because she was so beaten up she was unrecognizable. Didn't tell, all the things that I had done wrong and left undone and all of that. I presented what I needed to present. I did it. And they did it. They opened a new house. It was Magdalene, Omaha, and they've opened a beautiful justice enterprise, and they have a florist shop that's flourishing. Got on the plane about 8 o'clock at night thinking, I wonder if this grayness that I'm feeling that is completely replicated in Nebraska by the gray buildings, the gray clouds, the gray trees and everything, I wonder if this means, I shouldn't do this. Should I love my neighbor if I am uninspired? If I don't feel like it? Got on the plane, we got up to about 20,000 feet, and I'm feeling sorry for myself, but I'm feeling sorry for myself like this because I always traveled with amazing graduates of the program, and the person I was traveling with had never flown before, so she had been super excited the whole weekend in Nebraska, and she didn't understand that cardinal rule, you just don't cross the armrest. So I'm doing this, and then I realized she's actually just pushed me out of the way, and I'm kind of coming out of my fog, and she's leaning out the window taking pictures. We've broken through the clouds, and it's a supermoon. There is no gray. The moon is haloed. And the gray clouds from the top side were filled with deep color and beautiful shadows and depth. And she had her head on my shoulder and she said, I didn't know there was a sky above the clouds. I mean, can you imagine? Does that not break your heart? That there's people who don't know there's something beyond the gray. And why would she? She ran away from a foster care home in 6th grade where she had been horribly abused and went to the streets where she was more horribly abused, picked up a great addiction, spent time in detention, and then she was 18. We decide we're going to bring justice, so we graduate her to prison, where she spent another 12 years. And she came to us, and it was like she had seen the dark side of alleys, the short side of justice, the back side of anger, the underside of bridges. But the reason she had never seen the top side of a cloud is because people forgot to love their neighbor. She had never seen the vast expanse of interstellar space. The sun's, what is it? The sun in its course, the planets in their courses, the sun, what is it? No, you don't look it up. That's cheating. We are going to get there. The vast expanse of interstellar space. Huh? Okay, wait. The vast expanse of interstellar space. Let's just say the sun in its course, the planets, and this fragile Earth, our island home. We'll do the abbreviated version that we say in our liturgy. But it takes a loving community to help people get to the top side of the cloud. It takes that kind of love. And I turned to her and I said, Sophia, I'm good for another 5 years. I will keep doing this because I want people to remember there's something beyond the gray, especially me. That when I love my neighbor, I can trust that inspiration will come. I don't have to wait and be inspired to love my neighbor. I can trust the Spirit. I can trust, like the disciples, if we can keep going, keep inching towards Jerusalem, love will find us. Some of the ways that has worked out for us at Thistle Farms is we have loved our neighbors, starting with 5 women in Nashville, Tennessee. And many people say, you know, that's a horrible return on investment. You're investing $150,000 for 5 women to come into recovery. And first of all, that's about a third of the cost it costs to keep those same women in prison. Second off, no woman is coming in by herself. It takes a community to get a woman on the streets. It takes a community to get off a woman on the streets, and a woman helps heal that community because cousins come in. She stops generational trauma that has been going on. She gets her children back. It's an amazing investment. It changes laws. It changes language. It changes perception where we feel like we have permission to be compassionate again, and that we recognize people were victims way before they were criminals. And so for us, growing this over the last 26 years, there's all these beautiful things that are happening, including our global movement. 38 countries now. There was like 3 weeks ago, we got our first email. We've been working for 6 years. They've opened a house in Belize, the first one for women survivors. And not one of the women that we visited to be coming into that home were from Belize. They were all on the way. They were neighbors in search of a country. Just more and more and more statistics, I can't even. So, I'm from Music City, USA, and y'all know Music City got its name because of the fact that in the 1890s, the Fisk Jubilee Singers went on a world tour, and they met Queen Victoria, and they were so good, she said, "You must be from a Music City." I know, y'all thought it was country music, right? And I'm married to a country music writer. I mean, he's an amazing writer. He's got, you know, he's the Hall of Fame writer. He's a country music Hall of Fame writer. He has helped me always remember that to bring music and story helps us remember what love looks like and how we find the beauty in this world, how we find the joy and the humor in this world and in this work. We need it to keep going and to keep loving our neighbor. So when I was thinking about loving our neighbor, I turned to one of my old favorite songs written by Radney Foster, a good Episcopalian boy from Texas. He wrote it, and then graduates of the Fisk Jubilee Singers and the Tennessee State University Singers came together to record this for us. And what I love about it is you're going to see little snapshots of all these very small projects that we've been doing for so long, and how when you put them all together, it's a beautiful love story.
Hallelujah, little revival. Amen to love. Deep in my soul, little revival. Amen to love. Hallelujah, little revival. Amen to love. Deep in my soul, little revival. Amen to love. Hallelujah, little revival. Amen to love. Deep in my soul, little revival. Amen to love. Little revival. Little revival. A little revival. A little revival. Little revival. Little revival. Amen to love.
This was the reflection I wanted to end with that I've been writing for a few weeks. There is a difference between crying and weeping. The distinction is as subtle as between wrinkles and lines. Foundational cracks made by separating sadness from lament changes structure. Infinitesimal lines in sand between compassion and empathy are hard to cross. The differences are knowing our sense of touch goes deeper than skin. Weeping is knowing we don't need to be heroes but hosts. To weep is a lament full of compassion. To weep is a sign of love rooted in the longing for life. To weep is to know the fullness of a mother hen wanting to gather her chicks. To weep is to grieve the possibility of a requited love lost. Weeping is a holy act. May we all continue to love our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Becca Stevens. We're going to take an opportunity just to set some chairs here because we want to hear your curiosity. We'd love to hear more of Becca's story, but particularly with one of her associates and colleagues that is here with her tonight. So we thought it might be helpful to hear some different perspectives. We're going to ask Philip Craig to host your questions, generate a little creative discussion. But may I also remind you, as Becca has so subtly done, that there are Thistle Farms products that are available at the conclusion of the Q&A tonight. Becca is also happy if you purchase a book to personalize it for you. So I'm going to ask Philip to come forward and get us started with hopefully some creative questions.
Thanks. Oh, I am? I'm sitting in the middle? Is that? Okay, I thought that, no, that's good, I'm good. I thought that was up here. No, we're good. Thanks. Well, hello. Hi. Thanks to both of you. So I took lots of notes while you were talking. I was really interested in the piece about love is a defiant act, and then also later about how you don't have to be inspired to love your neighbor. So I appreciate those comments, which took me away from thinking earlier about chasing squirrels. And I was thinking about just that is an individual thing, how we kind of chase squirrels a lot. But I was also thinking about how institutions at times might feel like they're chasing squirrels. And I wonder if you might have some thoughts for how to move institutions forward who might feel at times that they're chasing squirrels.
That's a great question that I will answer, but I think Kristen has something she wants to do. Can I do one thing and then answer the question?
And I
I didn't
think
know this. Go right ahead.
I
Over to you.
have on a mic. Can everybody hear me? I'm Kristen. Hi. It is so fun to be with everybody. It really is. And I got to meet some of you at the reception, and it's good to see even more friends. I'm very happy. I'm a 2015 graduate of the Thistle Farms residential program. And I work with Becca, and it's an honor to work with her. And I have a candle, very important candle. One of the rituals that we do at Thistle Farms is we light this candle, and we've been lighting this candle since 1997. This candle is what brought me in off the streets because they were lighting it for me. So we light this candle, if I can figure this out. We light this candle for the woman who is still on the streets and who is trying to find her way home. Because this candle represents so much. It represents love, and it represents that light that women can find even in the darkest of nights. I can set it right.
So my thinking is that's what you can do. Seriously, to start a finance meeting by putting a simple candle in the middle to say we're lighting a candle for the woman on the street and the woman trying to find her way home changes the dynamic of that meeting. It's small rituals, I think, that help move institutions. Is it Thoreau that says every time truth takes a hit, an institution is built, or something like that? That the idea is to be able to continue to speak your truth of what love looks like, to speak your truth and to live into your truth in safe spaces. And that's what helps institutions still have life and still have a way to be together. So I would say add ritual. I would say to be able to speak your truth in love. And then also, don't let the spirit die in committee. You know, don't let it take 2.5 years to vote who's going to change the light bulb. You know, that's why we have a joke about us. How many Episcopalians does it take to change a light bulb? None. We don't change them. And the thing, because the process is so long, it's like, who wants to? You know, we'll just light a candle. No. But what I'm saying is, honestly, is if we could just move into it, let people do what they do without commodifying everything, we would be better as institutions. And the other thing I do think is to really, when you love your neighbor, means that, you know, you're engaged in the community and to make it beautiful and safe. And so it inspires you to do it not as an afterthought, but as a hopeful, holy thing. The way I say it sometimes is that if you have a priest who's having a hard time writing a sermon, don't send that person to the library, send them to prison. You can write a sermon in prison any day of the week. Any day of the week, it's there. And the same thing is if you're having a hard time at the church, go take out the trash. It's those things that keep us moving instead of just, you know, that thing of over-intellectualizing and analyzing it, that love is not as much about the dogma as it is dogged. It is dogged to bloom, to move. So there has to continually be some growth that we know love is thriving.
That's a good answer.
You can
You give me so much to think about tonight. There's no but there, I promise. Will you say a little bit about, well, first, this is such a beautiful candle. I wish there was a way that we could find a candle like that. Are there any opportunities for there to be candles available this evening for...
I'm so glad you asked.
Your microphone.
Yes, so our candles are over there. We have amazing other products as well. We also are online.
Will you say a little bit about what a normal day looks like for you and your work with Thistle Farms Ministries?
When I was in the program, you start out doing different schedules with classes on how to, manage your finances and counseling and therapies. And then later throughout the program, after 2 years of working and doing your therapies and your groups, then you graduate. So I completed the 2-year program, and that's what makes me a graduate. But during my time in the program, I started working at Thistle Farms, and I did different departments there. And today, I have a 15, a 13, I have custody of my 15, 13, and I have a 7-year-old who I had while I was in the out of the program. And a day for me just really starts with that intention of how am I going to get through this day without getting snapped at by my teenage daughters, but stay away from her. But just really focusing on kindness right now for me is a really big thing. How can I be kind? How can I love my neighbor so that it might make them remember to be kind if they're not? So just starting with intentionals, and I have my rituals. I wake up and I have my morning time, and then I get to work with Becca and all the women at Thistle Farms. So I really have a hard gig, man. I was talking to some friends earlier, and I was like, yeah, our job is really hard. We had to come out here, taking one for the team.
That's nice. Thanks. Yeah. I appreciate it. I would be thrilled to hear and invite questions from all of you gathered here this evening for Becca or for Kristen. Is there a question from the crowd? Aaron, yes.
Why the thistle?
Why the thistle is the question.
The thistles are the only wildflower or weed, depending on your perspective, that are still growing in the alleys where the women walk and sleep and turn tricks, and in the chain link fence around the prisons they're in. So when I was starting out and going to visit my neighbors, going out to meet myself, I would see thistles everywhere, and I loved the whole idea of it being a noxious weed that's illegal to grow in 17 states or something. Like, if it's illegal to plant a thistle, that is unbelievable to me. And that in addition to this history of survival by brutality that the thistle has, it has a huge deep taproot that can grow through concrete and survive drought and survive the flood in Tennessee, that it has this beautiful deep purple center. Even Solomon in all his glory is not arrayed like one of these.
Thank you. Yes.
Do a screenshot. I don't have it written anywhere.
Joe, we'll make sure that you get
I
a copy.
did write it. You can tell because I've written it so recently that I have 2 periods after the word. Thank you very much. But it was making me think about the whole idea of loving our neighbor and really thinking that is the difference between crying for and weeping with.
Yes. So let me just repeat the question real quick. Sorry, I'll just repeat the question so everyone can hear it. The question was just a conversation about the success rate for individuals who are a part of your program?
So our statistics are 75% of the women that enter the program are clean and sober 5 years later.
Huge.
Yes, Reed.
Becca, I'm struck that the program is 2 years. This is not a quick fix. There are no quick fixes.
So a comment that it's not a quick fix, 2 years. Would you like to say a little bit more about that from your own experience?
I wish it was longer. in the program, truly, I like how Becca says 2 years is just enough time for you to find a therapist, not like a therapist, and then like her again. It's enough time for you to have a home and work on, those things that for me, for 17 years, I didn't care about or knew I needed to care about them. And Thistle Farms is really great with that support after the 2 years to help you and get into affordable housing. Thistle Farms is even purchasing property that they're using specifically for the graduates to transition into, because affordable housing is such a problem, I think, everywhere. But 2 years is really just, if you think for me, 17 years on the streets, 2 years really isn't long enough, but they don't kick you out. You can stay forever and continue that community support and love.
Yes, Sandy. The question is how many women are in the program as we speak?
So think of it on 3 levels. So think of Thistle Farms as a vertically integrated model. Let's say that. Headquartered in Nashville, Tennessee. So in Nashville, Tennessee, there's about 32 beds, a safe house, and graduate housing, just in Nashville. In this aligned network, the sister programs, there's about 630 beds, long-term free beds for women survivors. Our shared trade partnerships, our global partnerships, there's about 1,400 women that are in those partnerships. So those are the 3 tiers of it. That doesn't count women. We have, I think Sheila said, 600 women are on the waiting list right now, which is why we're trying to do this national network for referrals, for best practices, for a way to really integrate all of these services. We had a woman a few years ago come from North Carolina into our program after she had left her pimp and been shot. She wasn't safe here. And then we can refer women other places, and people can refer, all across the country, and to be there for one another. The last thing I want to say, and I want us to end early so you feel comfortable that you have enough time to do the after show. It's not, I don't get a commission. I'm not doing this for me. Y'all know that, right? Like 100% of the sales of the books go to Thistle Farms. There's nothing I want except that the sales of the products are how you hire women. It's not about going out and just getting donations, which is important. If we don't sell, we don't have a reason to hire you to make candles. That's why I do it, just so you know. So I know it is embarrassing and awful for me, but I just want to be assuring you that it's not that. So I just want to say this about 2 years real quick, is that it takes a long time to get your teeth. So many women are coming in hugely damaged teeth, just horrible teeth, and to fix your mouth and just heal your mouth, even before you're going to go get your dentures, takes a long time, and then it takes a long time to get your dentures and fit your teeth. So if you can't even get your teeth right, you don't need to be going back out there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So this question is for Kristen. When you entered the program, I would imagine after 17 years on the streets, that you had a lot of skepticism, not knowing into the environment. At what point did you buy into it and realize that this really meant something, you really cared, and wanted to change?
So the question is about when you entered into the program, if after your previous life experiences, if you might have felt skeptical about what you were stepping into, And then if there was a moment, if I understand your question, where you really had your epiphany that this was exactly where you needed to be and that everything would be okay.
When I first came into the program, Regina Mullins, one of the very first 5 women in 1997, was the residential manager. She was one of the first women that I met. And all of the people that I had met previously in other programs had 30 days sober just like me. But this woman had been there since 1997, and she was smiling, she was happy, she had her kids, she had her life together, and she was helping other women. So that was my first hope shot that recovery was possible, by seeing her and the other graduates that had come before me. And I did have a relapse in the program, but instead of the director saying, you have to leave the program, you're not ever going to get your life together, you're just going to continue on this path, they said, what can we do to help you? And I don't think I had ever been asked that question before. What could anybody do to help me? And that was really a pivotal point, and that was 9 years ago. Yeah.
I understand. Okay. It's important. John, how are we? Sure, please do.
So Louise said that we could do a retreat, or some of our staff could come and stay at her house and do a retreat. And so I think this is an ongoing relationship.
Yes.
That's awesome. So this won't be a goodbye tonight. This will be a see you soon.
Yeah, this will be out.
That's wonderful. Yes.
Becca, you mentioned something about the cost of shipping your products back.
Yeah.
So, I have $2 and a granddaughter. I don't want you to incur any cost. So I'll commit $1,000 to buying a good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay. Thank you. Yes, that is so beautiful. Thank you. Tell me your name. Bill, thank you. What's their dad? Okay, now. The one serving the liquor. That is amazing. Thank you, Bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Phil, for having us. Thank you, Bishop, and thank you, John. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
We're so happy to be here. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
So please feel free to stay as long as you wish, of course. Thanks to all of you for your time this evening. Have a good night.
All right.
right.